All praises to the Most High, Yahweh Ba'ashem Yahweh Shai, Bahashem Raha Kodash. Double honors to the elder apostles and elder bishops of Great Millstone who rule well. Peace and salutations to the hopeful elect, scattered throughout the four corners of the earth, laboring in His truth in all sincerity. Isaiah chapter 54, verse 16, and I'm going to read this in the KJV. Behold, I have created the smith that bloweth the coals in the fire, and that bringeth forth an instrument for his work. And I have created the waster to destroy.
The missile can travel not only along a ballistic trajectory, but also along a suborbital one. This, thirdly, makes it possible to ensure a range of more than 35,000 kilometers while at the same time doubling its accuracy. Finally, it has the ability to penetrate all existing and future anti-missile defense systems. By the end of this year, Sarmat will indeed be placed on combat duty.
So that is President Vladimir Putin of Russia, and you heard him at the end of this video here state that by the end of this year, this weapon will be put to use, basically. And this weapon is capable of holding conventional and non-conventional warheads. So in this particular case, I don't think, while we are right here in the midst of World War III, that a sitting president would say that he would launch this particular weapon here, but it would only be holding conventional weapons, or conventional warheads, I should say. I do believe that Putin is serious about using this weapon, and if he does, then this would actually be leading to a full-scale nuclear war. And that's what we are approaching anyway. You know, we are getting closer and closer to that time where we are about to see the nations basically go all out and start launching nukes here. And once again, that was the RS-28 Sarmat. I believe NATO actually gave it the name the Satan II. That is a name that NATO gave it, the Satan II, but that once again is known as the RS-28 Sarmat. And that was the particular weapon that we saw being used in this video here that I started off with. So I want to go into that actual weapon a little bit more. And I just wanted to be sure on what I stated earlier in this video. So I did ask Google AI overview, does Russia's Sarmat missile have nuclear capabilities? Yes, Russia's RS-28, the Sarmat, also known as the Satan II by NATO, is specifically designed to have nuclear capabilities. It is a strategic liquid-filled ICBM intended to carry a wide variety of nuclear warheads. Nuclear payload. The missile is designed to carry multiple nuclear warheads, estimated by the U.S. to hold 10 or more, or up to 16 lighter nuclear warheads. Massive yield. Russian officials have claimed the payload is 4 times greater than anything in NATO's arsenal. Hypersonic capabilities. It can carry several Avangard hypersonic glide vehicles, or HGVs, designed to evade modern anti-missile defense systems. Range. The Sarmat has an estimated range of 10,000 to 18,000 kilometers, allowing it to strike targets across vast distances. Status. While testing has shown successes, some tests in 2024 reportedly suffered failures, according to Al Jazeera. However, as of May 2026, Russia has reported successful tests and plan to deploy, according to danyanews.tv. And the Sarmat was developed to replace older Soviet-era ICBMs. And so we see at the very end, the very last paragraph here, status. While testing has shown successes, some tests in 2024 reportedly suffered failures, according to Al Jazeera. One thing about the military, not just the United States military, but militaries all over the world, they're never ever going to tell you precisely, what's in their arsenal or how many of whatever, particular weaponry they're talking about is in their arsenal. You're never going to get an accurate number. So if Russia has approximately 5,500 or 5,500 total nuclear weapons, and they say the U.S. has about 5,200, those numbers could very well be greater or less. These particular nations, a lot of times, these may be unarmed nukes, basically meaning that the actual missile itself is there, but there's nothing inside of it. It doesn't carry warheads or anything to that effect, even though the actual missile is there. So it brings me to this: war is deception. And the reason why I'm going into this is because basically the last thing that was read, that last paragraph one more time, basically stated, while testing has shown successes, some tests in 2024 reportedly suffered failures. That could be true, or it also could be, Russia just, no country is basically going to tell the world and its enemies everything. Sometimes countries kind of lure you in by making you believe that, or making an opposing country, I should say, believe that their weapons are not ready to go. A lot of times, it's a lie. War is deception, as I was about to just go into. So war's deception is a foundational strategic principle notably articulated by Sun Tzu. All warfare is based on deception, and in Islamic tradition, war is deceit, meaning that victory depends on misleading the enemy regarding capabilities, intentions, and movements. It involves appearing weak when strong, creating fake targets, and using surprise to gain advantages. So I'm not going to go too far into this here. Just wanted to touch on, where it stated that there were some failures actually. A sitting president of any nation is not going to go on television and say, hey, by the end of this year, we plan on using this weapon, and it was just having failures. Not going to happen. So you really can't believe anything that a lot of these world leaders are stating right now, as we are in the midst of World War III. So you keep that saying in mind: war is deception, and you'll start to realize that a lot of stuff that you're seeing, whatever they're showing us, I should say, on television or in the news, some of it could be accurate, but a whole lot of it could be very inaccurate as well. And that's what we're seeing in Iran, actually, and as it says here, all warfare is based on deception, and in Islamic tradition, war is deceit, meaning that victory depends on misleading the enemy, and that, war is deceit is an Islamic tradition. And so that is who we are actually at war right now with in Iran, so there's a lot of deception going on in these tactics that are being used. So just something to keep in mind as we're keeping an eye on Russia and them launching this Sarmat ICBM for a test run. I'm going to go into a video that I came across a couple of years ago. And when I saw that Russia recently launched the Sarmat, and then I went into that Google AI overview summary just now about war being deception, it reminded me about something that I saw a couple of years ago, and I was able to find it. So this is a video that I came across, and I just want to share it here.
Rattling over the war.
Vladimir Putin.
The West accuses Vladimir Putin of nuclear saber-rattling over the war in Ukraine. At least today, the saber was rattling a little less.
The use of nuclear weapons is possible in the event of an exceptional threat to the sovereignty and territorial integrity of our country. In exceptional cases, I don't think this is such a case right now. There is no necessity for that.
But these pictures send a different message. Russia has been holding tactical nuclear drills near Ukraine's border, a not so subtle hint to Kiev and to the West. And President Putin is warning he may send conventional long-range missiles to other countries for strikes on Western targets. His response to NATO allies allowing Ukraine to hit Russian territory with Western missiles. But would he actually do this?
Some people in the West say, we've heard it before from Russia. We've heard saber rattling for the last 2 years.
Always.
And that it's a bluff.
Yeah, of course. It's always bluff. Till the time when it's not. You can keep thinking that Russia is bluffing. And then one day there's no more Great Britain to laugh at.
And all this at an economic forum, where you can't escape the geopolitics. The last few days in St. Petersburg have felt very strange. On the one hand, a giant international economic forum. Russia's message, business as usual. But clearly, it is not business as usual, with Russia waging war in Ukraine and soaring tensions between Russia and the West. And in his standoff with the West, Vladimir Putin seems to believe it will be the West that blinks first. Steve Rosenberg, BBC News, St. Petersburg.
So you heard it here. That was a Russian official basically stating that, Russia is not bluffing here. And, and I'll quote him as best as I can. He said, sure, you can keep thinking it's a bluff until one day it's not. Keep thinking it's a bluff until one day there's no Great Britain. There's no more Great Britain for you to laugh at. So right about now, for Vladimir Putin, going back to the very first video I showed with the test launch of the RS-28 Sarmat, when Putin said that he plans on using this by the end of the year, and then you go back to what this guy stated 2 years ago, Russia is not bluffing right about now, and like he said, you can keep thinking it's a bluff until one day it's not. So it's just something to keep an eye on. Like I said, we're getting closer and closer. These nations are going full scale right now. They're testing everything, which is going to take me to the next article I have here. And once again, we do have another nuclear powerhouse here, which is India. And this particular article came out 12 hours ago off of Morning View. India fires a nuclear missile that splits into multiple warheads mid-flight, each hitting a different target 5,000 kilometers away. On March 11th, 2024, a 3-stage solid-fueled missile climbed off a launch pad on Dr. APJ Abdul Kalam Island, a sliver of land in the Bay of Bengal that India uses for its most sensitive weapons tests. Minutes later, somewhere high above the atmosphere, the missile's payload section broke apart. Multiple warheads separated, each steering toward a different pre-programmed target roughly 5,000 kilometers from the launch point. When the last one struck its mark, India joined a club with only 5 other members, nations that have successfully tested a missile capable of splitting into several independently guided nuclear warheads in a single flight. The test, codenamed Mission Divyastra, was the first time India publicly demonstrated multiple independently targeted re-entry vehicles, technology on its longest-range operational ballistic missile, the Agni-5. Prime Minister Narendra Modi announced the success within hours, calling it a milestone in indigenous defense capability and a testament to the country's push for self-reliance and strategic weapons. I'm not going to read the entire article here. Just wanted to show that, Russia was a little bit earlier today, if I'm correct, as well as India. So we'd have Russia and India both within a few days of each other. I don't know the exact date, earlier this week or earlier today, when Russia test launched their Sarmat, but here we have India right now, just on the 11th, which was yesterday, Eastern Standard Time, US, is when they test launched theirs. And once again, this particular missile is capable of deploying 10 separate warheads. So once this thing goes up into the air, the very top of the missile opens up and 10 smaller nuclear weapons or warheads, weapons I should say, they all come out and spread out over various targets. And so this particular one, once again, multiple warheads separated, each steering toward a different pre-programmed target, roughly 5,000 kilometers from the launch point. So right now, these countries, are flexing their muscles. And like I mentioned earlier, we're this much closer to nuclear destruction, which means the deliverance of the elect of the Most High, Yahweh Ba'ashem Yahweh Shai, is drawing near. So this is actually a glorious thing here, to see this, because we understand that our salvation is near. And that's exactly what we get, what we read, I should say, when we go to Luke chapter 21. Luke 21, and I'm going to read 25 through 28 in the NLT. And there will be strange signs in the sun, moon, and stars. And here on earth the nations will be in turmoil, perplexed by the roaring seas and strange tides. People will be terrified at what they see coming upon the earth, for the powers in the heavens will be shaken. Then everyone will see the Son of Man coming on a cloud with power and great glory. So when all these things begin to happen, stand and look up, for your salvation is near. And that's what we're saying here, just like verse 25 says, and here on earth the nations will be in turmoil. And that's what we're saying, there's nothing but wars and rumors of wars, as the scriptures tells us. And it's always been like this. All of these nations have always been at each other's throats, but the only difference is this time is that we are pretty much towards the end of this thing. We can see several major prophecies taking place, one of which is Revelation 13 is coming to pass, as well as the time of Jacob's trouble. So, you have a lot of naysayers out there, especially complete non-believers, who would say something like, oh, well, there's always been wars. There's always been these type of things happening in the world. So that doesn't mean anything. That's what they would say. But, you have to put this thing, there's a certain, all of the prophecies have to take place. That's first and foremost. So, you may have heard somebody say a couple of weeks ago, or a couple of months ago, or a couple of years ago, you come across these people who are complete non-believers, but they don't understand the scriptures. They don't understand how prophecy works. And right now we are at the end. So once again, verse 25 says, and here on earth the nations will be in turmoil. And that's what we're seeing. The stress of nations is how the KJV puts it. So whether you're talking Iran, US, the state of Israel, Russia, Ukraine, all the stuff that's happening, all over the world, and you start looking, Pakistan and India, these two particular countries have, been at it for I don't know how long now, and they both have nuclear weapons. So all of these countries are going to start launching. These countries that have nukes, it's going to happen. These countries are not test firing nukes, just for the hell of it here. And these are the times that we are in. And when you pay attention to this stuff, you'll understand just how much closer we are to this thing. And this is why verse 28 says, when you see these things begin to happen, stand and look up, for your salvation is near. Right now, when you go back and you look at verse 25, and it says, there will be strange signs in the sun, the moon, and stars. And then scroll down to verse 26, people will be terrified at what they see coming upon the earth. This is how the imagery, the images that we're seeing of UFOs that they're releasing. And I'm not going to say that every last one of those are fake, but a lot of those that we're seeing online, those are not real. The scriptures clearly tell us that people are going to be terrified at what they see coming. So the stuff that they're actually showing us, people are just going about their actual day. They're going right about their day-to-day lives. Nobody's really paying attention to it. Some people may take a quick glance at it. Some people may buy a newspaper and read it. Some people may scroll across it online and see it, watch a couple of videos. But no one is terrified at what they see coming. That's how you know that most of that stuff that they're showing us is probably going to be a part of some Project Bluebeam or something to that effect. But what they're showing us, and I would say at least from what I've seen, the vast majority of it doesn't seem real, because if it was real, just like the scripture here says, the KJV says men's hearts will be failing them for fear. People will be terrified of what they see coming upon the earth. So no one has really gotten to that point yet, which kind of lets me know that what they're showing us, at least up to this point, is not real as of yet. But we're going to know when it's real, because men's hearts will be failing them, as verse 26 in the KJV says. Let's go on to the next scripture that I have here, 2 Peter chapter 3, verse 10. I'll read this in the KJV. But the day of Yahweh Bashem Yahweh Shai will come as a thief in the night, in the which the heavens shall pass away with a great noise, and the elements shall melt with fervent heat. The earth also and the works that are therein shall be burned up. So that goes back to the videos that I showed earlier regarding Russia and India. That also goes, for the U.S. as well. The U.S. has nukes. China, obviously. India and Pakistan, as I mentioned earlier. Pretty much the majority of those NATO nations, they all have nuclear weapons. The state of Israel has what's known as, if I'm correct, I think it's called, and I don't remember the name of the actual agreement that they have, but they don't really disclose the amount of nuclear weapons that they have. Could be as many as 200, could be as little as maybe 20, but they don't disclose the amount of nuclear weapons that they have. That is some agreement that they have where they have the privilege of not doing so. But this is where we're heading here, where, the elements shall melt with fervent heat. And as you heard, like I mentioned earlier, Vladimir Putin is stating that by the end of this year, he plans on using his. So it could be a bluff, might not be a bluff, but like the individual said, you can keep thinking it's a bluff until one day it's not. So we know, as according to scriptures, though, that eventually it will not be a bluff, So let's go into Zechariah chapter 14, verse 12. And this shall be the plague wherewith Yahweh Bashem Yahweh Shai will smite all the people that have fought against Jerusalem. Their flesh shall consume away while they stand upon their feet, and their eyes shall consume away in their holes, and their tongue shall consume away in their mouth. So that's giving you a real descriptive display there of what's going to be happening, how people are going to be looking as their skin is being vaporized. Generally speaking, when someone is vaporized, it's a fairly quick process, but while it's happening, it's going to feel like an eternity, so people are going to be vaporized and start melting. That's generally a few seconds. But especially when you're talking about the immense heat and radiation that's going to be involved with this nuclear judgment. But while they're melting, while their skin is dissolving away, it's going to feel like forever. It's going to feel like an eternity. So, we can see that the scriptures have been telling us about this stuff for a very long time here, and we're starting to see it come to pass. And they make movies about this type of stuff, man. So we look at this and obviously I'm not going to use the entire thing, but we see it right here at the top of the screen. This is from Terminator 2 Judgment Day. This is when Sarah Connor was having a dream there, and she dreamed that she was witnessing some kids in the playground, if I'm correct. If I can remember this scene correctly, she was watching some kids in the playground, and nuclear missiles started dropping on LA. And she was caught up in that. And you can see her there. Basically, that's exactly what the book of Zechariah chapter 14 verse 12 actually described. What we're seeing right there. So their flesh shall consume away while they stand upon their feet, and their eyes shall consume away in their holes, and their tongue shall consume away in their mouth. And that's exactly what's happening here. That's their flesh. Their flesh is melting away, as the scripture tells us. So the scriptures are very accurate. It's very accurate. And we're to that point now where, there's no way possible that you're not seeing this, or, there's no way unless you've just been completely blinded. But it's pretty much impossible to not see this. If the spirit is working with you, you're going to see it. You're going to see that, the people who make these movies, they see it. This is how, don't get it twisted. These people in Hollywood, they know what's in the scriptures. But them being the devils that they are, they're going to make money off of it. They're going to make as much money off of it as possible on what's in the scriptures. And that's why they do stuff like that. That's why they make these type of movies and don't think that whoever made this particular movie here, that he's not very well aware of what's in Zechariah 14 and 12. So let's go into Isaiah 55 and 11, and I'll pretty much start to wrap it up with this one here. So shall my word that go, Salakia, I'm going to start that over. So shall my word be that goeth forth out of my mouth. It shall not return unto me void, but it shall accomplish that which I please, and it shall prosper in the thing whereto I sent it. So like I said, everything is playing out. Everything is playing out exactly how it was foretold to the prophets. And the prophets are back here today. And I think that's 1 Corinthians 14, out of the 32nd verse. And the spirit of the prophets are subject to the prophets. And so we're seeing everything playing out, whether it's the MOTB, Jacob's trouble, that's already started. It started with the northern tribes. It's about to pick up again. You're already seeing them with they're starting to redistrict, all of these maps and all of these counties that were, blue, so-called blue, as far as, the political map, these are the red districts, these are the blue districts. A lot of these things are being, they're redoing these maps. So we're seeing right where we are in terms of, I believe that's Jeremiah 30 and 7, Jacob's trouble. So we're right here. And once again, as the Most High said, his word shall not return to him void. I'm going to read Isaiah 55 and 11 one more time. So shall my word be that goeth forth out of my mouth. It shall not return unto me void, but it shall accomplish that which I please, and it shall prosper in the thing whereto I sent it. So I'm going to pretty much end there. This is a glorious time that we're living in. We have been blessed to see this, to make it this far, to see exactly where we are right now in terms of biblical prophecy. So all praises to the Most High, Yahweh Bashem, Yahweh Shai. So with that being said, I pray that this has been edifying and reaches the ears it's supposed to reach. Shalom.